Selena the series. So I finished this last night. Well, technically super early in the morning. I'd been watching this series, and then slowly my husband started kind of paying attention to it while I was watching, and then he was into watching it, and there were times where I would stop an episode because I was done. I wasn't planning to proceed and to the next episode, and he would say things like, "Oh, you can watch another episode if you want." So last night, well, technically, like I said, early this morning, we watched the final 2 episodes of this show. Now, I'm very familiar with Selena's story. Most people know her story. Well, I'm sure there are some people that don't know anything about it, whatever. But for people who know of Selena Quintanilla, they know her story. I knew how it's going to end. But at the same time, I wasn't quite prepared for the emotional impact it was going to have on me when I was watching it. Because let me tell you, that really hit me. And I think when it started to just really grab me, and all throughout the series, I was just had this feeling of just dread knowing. And then this increasing level of anger, just renewed anger at what happened and how ridiculous it was. And the moment that it really started to grab me, just like clinch me, was when it was showing, this was in the next to the last episode, it was showing her infamous Astrodome performance, and it was when she was singing her closing song, Como la Flor. And the words that she was saying at the end, we'll see you later, goodbye, and it's just, looking back on it now, just seems almost, it's just, the whole thing is just so sad, what happened to her. But when they showed, as it was happening, well, let me correct myself. This is a bit of a spoiler warning, but not really. Not a spoiler with regard to what is going to happen, because by now you should know her story if you're starting to watch this. But anyway, they do not go into explicit detail or show explicitly what happens to her. You see her go into the room with Yolanda, and you don't see anything else after that as far as what happened to Selena. So you're spared that, but it's coming, and the build up to it just it made me personally just feel just this horrible sick feeling in my stomach. And Selena, I think her downfall, her mistake, was being so trusting and just wanting to, or not that she wanted to, but this was her personality. She just saw the good in people. She gave people the benefit of the doubt. She was not cynical about people in general. She was very sweet, very kind, very loving, very trusting. Even when people around her were trying to warn her about things. And also, she thought she could take care of the situation herself. I mean, Yolanda had been cut off completely, but the thing that brought them back together again was that Selena needed financial papers for tax purposes, and Yolanda said she had them. Selena believed her, and then that's, they meet up together. She never told anybody where she was going. She just left. From what I understand, she never said anything to her husband or her father or anybody else in her family that she was going to go meet Yolanda. So it's just like, you look at it and you say, man, if she just been a little bit less trusting, if she'd been more dependent on, let's say, her father or Chris or other people around her to help her deal with this situation in the end. But the thing is, that just wasn't part of her nature. And if she had been a less trusting, a less naive person, I think that she wouldn't have been as charming as she was to so many people. So that's just kind of me just sort of about how it ended. And it just really, it was so sad, and it did affect me. And it was hard to go to sleep after that. Let's just say. I mean, we probably shouldn't have watched it so late. It was like 2:30, 3 o'clock by the time we finished. And then, I tried to go straight to bed, and I was just really upset, but whatever. It's not like I didn't know what was going to happen, but I think it was just the way that it was portrayed and everything was just so touching and just heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching and just everything. But what I want to talk about right now is the series as a whole and what I thought about it. I did a review for the Selena movie on the 25th anniversary of her death last year. In March of last year, I put it up, and I think it was March. Maybe it went up the very next day, but whatever. I think I tried to time it to put it up that day, but whatever. And I indicated how I felt about that movie. I made no bones about the fact that I'm not a Jennifer Lopez fan at all. I felt like she did okay in the role, but that you could tell, obviously she's not Selena. She's trying to mimic Selena, but it's not the real thing. And so it just wasn't, the movie was all right. I didn't hate it, but I didn't feel like it was the best thing ever. I felt like it could have been so much worse. I really feel like they should have tried to see if they could cast them for this role was Jennifer Pena. And I cannot remember if I mentioned this, but Jennifer Pena, I think, was also managed or kind of looked over by Selena's father. And she has a very striking resemblance to Selena in face and figure a little bit, but also in voice. And it would have been just fantastic if they could have cast someone that looked so much like, the real Selena. But that's really kind of sort of a minor complaint when it comes to people playing Selena. Anyway, the Selena movie did a decent enough job of telling us her story. The Selena series goes so much more in depth about Selena, but not just Selena, all of her family members, which I found interesting because, yeah, it's called Selena the series, but it's also about her father, it's about her mother, it's about her brother, it's about her sister, it's about Chris. And while Selena does monopolize the story, as she should, because this is about her, they would still go off in these little pathways about people in her family and just showing their own different struggles and the different things that they were involved in and doing. And it showed different people that were in her band, Ricky Vela and Pete. I don't know. I can never tell if I'm saying his name correctly. The dude with the long hair. Studio maybe is his name. I can't recall. But anyway, so they had these different people that were shown. And you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that person. And they had her in her nice little, or her iconic outfits that she would wear at different times. And they did a really good job of recreating those outfits and things like that. So we got a really nice detailed story of Selena from her childhood up until the time of her death. It goes into a lot more of her childhood than we ever saw in the movie, obviously because it's a series. Each episode was about 30 to 40 minutes long. So not terribly long, but still a good chunk of time that you spend with them and you see their slow rise to fame, to where they got at the end. And it talks about the financial struggles that they had. And obviously you see her father a lot. He was the driving force behind the band. My opinion about her father has not changed. I've never really been a fan of her father. I do recognize that if it weren't for his drive, his push, Selena and Selena Los Dinos, they would have never gotten to where they got to. At the same time, if it wasn't for his drive and his push, Selena would probably still be alive. Selena enjoyed singing, she enjoyed performing, but her passion was mostly in things like designing. She had this boutique she started up, she had a fashion line that she was doing. She really, really wanted to have an English language album, and that plays a huge part throughout the course of the story. It is a constant thing that is sort of embedded into the course of her career, and the long process it took them to get to where she started to record songs for her English language album. I appreciated that they showed us her meeting that she had with the songwriter for I Could Fall in Love, which I think is probably my favorite English language Selena song. I really like that song, and it was some guy from Tennessee. I can't remember his name now, but I thought that was pretty interesting that we got to see that, and all the different gears and cogs and wheels and everything that kind of had to work together to get this thing done, and her struggles with knowing that when she launched her English language career, it was she would be like she was going solo. The record company wanted her, just her. They didn't necessarily want AB. They didn't want Suzette. And so she had a lot of struggles with that because she'd spent her entire life surrounded by her family. And she mentioned multiple times about how, you know, she's up on stage and they're with her, and she really struggled with the thought of being up on stage without them. So family was very important to her. At the same time, like I mentioned in another video that I recently did, which I think was maybe the one to the was a reaction and commentary and translation of the Amor Prohibido video that she did and that Netflix did, a comparison video. But at the same time, their family was close, but like all families, they had their little moments, you know, the little quarrels and everything. And her father was just pretty, okay, what was I saying? That her father was pretty overbearing and controlling. And the story of Chris and Selena's relationship is kind of sad. You know, she was quite young when they got together. She was inexperienced. She hadn't really dated too much, but she was madly in love with Chris. They wanted to get married. And so, as most people know, you know, they ran off and eloped because her father pretty much made it impossible for them to do anything else except go behind their back and run off and get married. And then he would have no choice but to accept Chris into the family. I feel like Chris has been treated hugely unfairly by the Quintanillas as a whole, maybe more specifically Abraham Quintanilla. And I felt like it was really terrible that there was this lawsuit that happened. I think it was after he wrote his book. And I don't understand why they didn't want him to tell his own story, because Selena was a huge part of his life. He has his own story to tell. Why can't he share his story? And it's just a shame he was not consulted for for work on the series, which I don't know why they did that. I don't know if it was that the Quintanillas demanded that he not be consulted. And if that's the case, that would be just absolutely awful and completely unfair. Of course, the show does not delve into all this stuff that's happened since Selena died, all these conflicts between Chris and the family. But yeah, as a whole, I always found Chris kind of a sympathetic character, but I do appreciate that they go into a little bit of detail with regard to tensions in their marriage. You know, every couple goes through stuff like that, and Chris and Selena were no exception. But they show how they kind of, were going through these hard times, and how they worked through things like that, and were getting ready to plan a family, and then, Yolanda destroyed all of that. But anyway, so that's one of the pros, the huge detail in the story and how we get to know the family very well. A little bit of trivia: the lady that played her mother ended up playing, not ended up, but way back when, in the 1997 Selena movie, she played Selena's cousin Deborah, who was also portrayed or shown in this series. Deborah was the one that they brought in to help with stuff at Q Productions or with the boutique or something like that. So I found that kind of an interesting piece of trivia. I didn't know that until recently when I saw someone had mentioned that on a video somewhere on YouTube. Also, something else that was kind of interesting, I looked up Laura Canales, who was the Tejano singer that Selena beat or like her first Tejano Music Award. I think she was like 15, 16, around there. And she beat Laura Canales, who had won several Tejano Music Awards before then. It shows a little scene of them talking in the bathroom, and Selena really idolized the woman, was just looked up to her. And the woman was quite gracious and nice to her when they were talking. But I looked up Laura Canales because I was wondering if she was related to Johnny Canales, who had this show in Mexico. I believe it was I think it was Mexican based. And it was really the Johnny Canales show that helped kind of start to launch Selena into the public spotlight beyond what they were doing before. But Laura Canales, I don't think she was related to Johnny Canales. But I did find out an interesting and kind of sad fact about her, was that she actually passed away 10 years after Selena died. I believe it was 2005, on Selena's birthday. Is that not like eerie, creepy, or what? Anyway, I wanted to share that particular piece of trivia with you because I thought that was kind of interesting. I did make notes this time, you guys. Not necessarily script notes, but things that I wanted to bring up during the course of this video. So I'm scratching them off as I go along. I've already talked about the detailed story. I've talked about the trivia. Something that I was also thinking about as I was watching this series was what a shame it was that Selena and her brothers and sisters were not raised completely, or were not raised as bilingual children. They did not learn Spanish until many years later. It was actually through the act of singing that helped Selena learn Spanish. I've mentioned this before. She started singing phonetically. She had no clue what she was singing. I mean, I'm sure they told her this is what it means, but she really didn't know. She was just singing phonetically. And then eventually she learned it, and she could speak it quite well. You could tell that that Spanish was not her first language, that she was not a native Spanish speaker, but she was still able to communicate quite effectively, just spoke very well. And even though it was kind of a shame that she wasn't raised bilingually, at the same time, that was part of her charm, that she was not a native Spanish speaker. She would make these little grammatical mistakes, and it was cute and adorable, and she would laugh at herself. You can see this on some of her videos where she's being interviewed. I mean, one time she forgot how to say the word 14. And she had to be corrected, and it was really cute and funny. I'll try to remember to link that in the description if I can, in the description of this video when it goes up. But just so, all these things that seem kind of like, man, that's a shame that this didn't happen. But at the same time, that's kind of what molded and shaped her as an individual and made her so interesting and so charming and adorable. And she was just a super special individual. And it's just, gosh, this makes me so mad again to think about everything that happened. Okay, I'm marking off the costumes. Another thing that I enjoyed was the fact that they used Selena's voice during the singing performances. I don't think Christian should have tried at all to sing the songs herself. There were some parts where she would do little bits of singing. You could tell it wasn't Selena, obviously, because Selena has a very distinctive voice. But I think it was the best choice to have Christian do lip syncing. Some people had complained about the lip syncing that Christian did in her performances, but I saw a video that Selena's brother AB did. I think it came out, I don't know, maybe sometime last year or earlier this year, and he was saying, well, that was actually intentional, that the lip syncing wasn't quite good in the beginning of the series, because when Selena had to lip sync, she wasn't always the best at it herself. It was a learning curve for her. And as she went on in her, performances and stuff, when she had to lip sync, because she didn't lip sync all the time, her Astrodome performance was not a lip syncing performance, but in the ones where she did have to, she got better at it. And then throughout the course of the series, Christian, acting as Selena, also got better at the lip syncing. So I found that quite interesting bit of trivia. I did not know that. And so I guess the people who were complaining about that didn't know that either. So I appreciated that AB was clearing that up. He was also pointing out how people, they had these complaints when Jennifer Lopez was cast as Selena because she's Puerto Rican. Christian Serratos has Mexican heritage, so people were, I think, a little happier that she was chosen. But for me personally, And this goes also for people that portray Americans. I don't care if they're from the UK or Australia or whatever other English-speaking country or whatever, as long as they can convince me that they're an American, they sound like an American, act like an American, whatever, it does not bother me in the slightest where they came from. But some people were pretty hung up on the fact that, you know, Lopez was not Mexican or Mexican American. That was never really a thing that bothered me. I just don't like Jennifer Lopez. I just don't like her, but her heritage was like zero issue for me at all. If she could convincingly pull off the character of Selena, I just see that as a win overall. But he was talking about how people were complaining about things like that, and I think as far well, he was also talking about how people were complaining that the actress didn't look like her, like Jennifer Lopez didn't look like her convincingly enough like her, and she didn't really look like her. Some people were saying she just looked like she was playing Jennifer Lopez, playing Selena. But I have to say, there were some moments where they captured her look so well that I could see flashes of Selena in Christian. It was really eerie. I mean, I knew it wasn't Selena, but it was strange, especially towards the end as they were showing things. It was just really strange how in some ways she was quite convincing as Selena. So this brings me to the performances that were recreated. It's going to tie into Christian's performance playing in the role. Her acting, I have mixed feelings about Christian's acting. And even my husband brought this up, that there were times that she was way too dramatic and she exaggerated stuff a bit much. And she also, in some of the scenes where she would do this laugh, because Selena laughed all the time. She was a very happy, life-loving person, and she was just laugh, laugh, laugh. And she had a very distinctive laugh. When Christian would do the laugh, after a while, well, it didn't really sound like Selena, but after a while, it started to kind of get on my nerves. And when Christian would also talk or kind of like whine, oh, but the little whiny voice that she would do, that also started to really grate on my nerves. I was like, wow, that's kind of annoying me. And I think it was just that there were moments where Christian just could not fully capture the essence of Selena. She just wasn't quite translating that to us effectively. And I think that showed in some of her performances. But at the same time, this is why I feel mixed. At the same time, there were also many instances where her performance was very, very good, especially when she would do dramatic scenes. There was the scene where her father found out about them having a relationship, and he fired Chris, and they left him like at a, I don't know, gas station, rest stop area type place. And the way Selena, or listen to me, the way Christian acted that part out was very, very heart-wrenching. And I thought she did an excellent job in that scene. I felt so sorry for her. I mean, it just really grabbed me. And I thought she did better in the scenes where she had to act quite dramatic than she did in some of the other scenes where she sort of had to act normal or kind of whiny. You know, she was a teenager and she wanted to do teenager stuff, and her dad wouldn't let her, and she'd kind of whine, you know. But I felt like Christian also did a really good job in the final scene argument with Yolanda, when they were in the truck and talking, and then they got out to go into the hotel room. I thought she did really good in that. So there were these moments where her performance just really was quite good. And then there were other moments where her performance felt like it was kind of falling short of hitting the mark. That doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the show as a whole. I really did enjoy the show. And I think if you're a fan of Selena, I can see why, like I am, I could see why you would have some problems, and I could see where the problem areas might be for some people. But I think as a whole, just looking at the whole package, I think it was a very loving tribute to this beautiful human being inside and out. And I'm glad that I was able to watch it. I looked forward to watching an episode, every night when we would sit down and watch an episode. I was also going to come back around to Christian's performances. There were some, I mentioned this in one of the other videos that I did. There were some performances that she did where, like, let's say the Amor Prohibido music video, I mentioned when I did a reaction to that her movements were just a little bit too exaggerated and jerky and just clunky looking and not natural. And then there were other performances that she would do. Now, I have not, the only comparison reaction I did was to the Amor Prohibido video. There is a comparison of her Astrodome performance, like her Como la Flor, a comparison between the original and what Christian did. Now, I've seen that performance many times, so I kind of have a good memory of it in my head. When I was watching her doing that performance, I thought she did an excellent job. Personally, I thought she did better than Jennifer Lopez did in her performance. Now, they didn't show the disco medley, but they showed in the series, but they showed when she did Amor Prohibido. I thought she did quite well in there, but also the very last one, Como la Flor, that was quite good. And when it was showing her do Bitty Bitty Bum Bum after that. I also liked how they went into the history of the songs, where they came from, who worked on them, stuff like that. I knew a lot of these little details. Her brother, AB, did a lot of the songwriting. He is quite talented. And I feel like his father didn't really appreciate what he contributed to the group as much as he should have. His main focus obviously was on the figurehead of the group, which was Selena. But anyway, so that's why I feel mixed about I feel mixed about the show. I do have mixed feelings about the show, but as a whole, I really did enjoy it. And I do recommend people check it out. Try to get past some of these little snags in Christian's performance and just try to appreciate the story that we're being told and see it as kind of like maybe like a documentary-ish on Selena's life. Maybe that will help to get past. This particular scene right here is when Selena met Beyonce. I knew that was going to happen before it happened because I had heard about it somewhere. Someone was complaining about, some article was complaining about how it was done. I think they felt like there should have been more focus on race or something, which was like, okay. Anyway, but tying back to Christian, my mixed feelings about this show are mostly tied in with Christian's performance, but any issues I had with her performance really were not enough to make me dislike the show. Now, I know the show has not got good ratings with the official critics and with the audience. And this is going to be one of those times that I'm going to break away from what the audience feels. I don't feel like this is as bad as the 40-some percentile range. Not at all. I would probably give it in the 70s, mid to low 70s. I think I enjoyed this more than the movie just because of how much more we see of her life and how many more performances we see recreated. So that was really fun to see that. What else? Let's see. Oh, I know what else I was going to mention was that there were some things that they showed in the movie that I really wish they had shown in the series, and I'm not quite sure why they didn't. One was when the stage started to collapse. I think it was in Monterrey, Mexico. Well, that was how it was shown in the movie. The people were pushing the stage, and so that was kind of, I wish they had shown a little bit more of that. They did kind of go into one episode that happened where there was a fight that broke out during one of her performances. That was really kind of the only sort of time where they showed potential danger or, things going sort of off the rails in her performances. But I wish they'd shown that scene. I also wish they had shown the scene where Big Bertha broke down, which is the bus, and these people offered to help. And when they were trying to pull the bus, which that was like, why would you even try? They were using a car to try to pull this big, huge tour bus. It tore the bumper off of their vehicle, which they showed in the movie. They did not show this in the series. Another thing that they didn't show, which I feel like would have been very interesting to show, would be some of her collaboration work that she did with other people. She did some work with, I think it was David Byrne. I keep wanting to say Gabriel Byrne, but I know it's not him. He's the actor. I think the guy's name was David Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E. And they did a song called, I think it was called God's Child. He sang the English portion. She sang the Spanish portion. They also did not show her doing her collab work with the Barrio Boys. People like that. They showed, What was I saying when you walked in? Oh yeah, her performances with her collab performances with different people. She also did. There was some guy she sang a song with, Emilio. I can't remember his name. She did a music video with him, sang a song. They didn't really go into those collab things, and I wish that they had done that. That would have been pretty cool to see. Another thing that they didn't go into or show at all, really, they touched on it a tiny, tiny bit, but sort of in a roundabout way. So Selena loved like Fabergé egg type, decorative egg things. And they showed, I believe, maybe her father giving her one, or her sister, or something. I can't remember. Someone in her family gave her this egg, decorative egg. But if I'm not mistaken, the ring that she had worn that Yolanda gave to her had an egg on it too. They did not show the thing about this ring that Yolanda gave her. Now, in the movie, they presented it as Yolanda asking for the people of the boutique to chip together and get Selena this nice ring. And then in the movie, they made it seem like they showed that Yolanda acted like she had done it all herself. Now, I don't know the facts behind that, but I did know that there was a ring Yolanda had given Selena, and that when they had their final argument that resulted in Selena's death, Selena had removed the ring. She was giving it back to Yolanda. I mean, their friendship, that was it. But when she was shot, for whatever reason, she still had the ring in her hand. And when she ran to the lobby, she still had the ring in her hand. And when she was put in the ambulance, and she, I guess her grip relaxed and she dropped the ring in the ambulance. They showed that, I believe, in the movie. And according to what I have heard and seen, I think maybe from the ambulance people or whatever, that was something that did happen. They didn't show anything like that at all about the ring. I really wish that they had, because I think that would have been a really just powerful, dramatic moment that they could have just put right on top of everything that happened. So that was kind of disappointing that they didn't do that. They did touch on things, other little trivia things that I already knew about, like I had mentioned in my video of the Amor Prohibido song, that when she filmed that video, the shirts that she was wearing were her husband's shirts. They kind of touched on that a little bit when she was packing to go off to the shoot for the video. She was packing his shirts to take. They don't really specifically or explicitly tell you that that's what she was going to do, but you could see that those were his shirts. It was a red shirt, a white shirt. I believe they also showed the white shirt. Anyway, so there were those little tiny things that I wish had been included, but honestly, as a whole, I really did enjoy this series. It would probably be something I wouldn't mind rewatching, just to see all the great performances that, recreated wonderful performances that they showed here. And I don't know, maybe a second viewing would kind of make me enjoy it more, or maybe it would make me sort of notice Christian's flaws in acting even more. But then at the same time, like I said, there's that balance. It's balanced out with her strong performances in other aspects. So I know it kind of feels like a quite muddied review of this series, but honestly, as a whole, I did enjoy it, and I'm not really in agreement at all with the low audience scores on this. I feel like it was quite solidly done. It's a shame people like Chris Perez weren't involved at all, but I feel like that taking the whole package, it's a decent enough representation of Selena and her life story and the type of person that she was. And I feel like anybody who's a fan of her and her work, just kind of go into it with an open mind. Maybe don't expect too much from it, and then maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised by it. I went into it with not a huge amount of expectation. I just went into it looking forward to it, not knowing what we were going to see at all, but enjoying, for the most part, what we did have. And I'm glad that, we got to see this. I feel like it's certainly something that she was deserving of, to have a series like this put out about her, so we could get to know her a little bit more and the type of person that she was. I mean, people who already were her fans, they know this about her. It is not really a surprise. But for people that didn't know too much about her, maybe, I don't know, maybe some parts of this would kind of turn you off, like the performance issues that I was saying, but just try to go into it with an open mind. And then when you're done watching this, if you didn't know who she was, go check out some of her live performances, her music videos too on YouTube. After we finished this movie, obviously, well, my husband went straight to YouTube and then he was like looking up Selena videos. And so all these Selena videos were playing, and that kind of put me in a funky, foul, sad, down mood too. So it's just, I don't know. I had gotten to the point where watching her didn't make me quite as sad as it used to. And now after feeling like I've lived with her for several hours, you know, in this story about her, it's kind of put me in that really sad, down mood again. But she was taken far too young, and it's a tragedy what happened to her. It's terrible. Just, I can't even think of enough words to explain or just express how awful this was. She was so freaking young, but she lived a huge life in her 23, almost 24 years that she was on this planet. She was just a couple weeks shy of her 24th birthday. And if I'm remembering correctly, also, I think that she was buried around the time of her 3rd year anniversary with Chris. I might be wrong. I might need to double check that, but I thought that she and Chris got married in early April, and she was buried in early April, just a few days after she was killed. So that's tragic and awful, and it's just, ugh. But she was a beautiful person, and she had a wonderful gift, and I'm glad that the world got to know her a little bit, but I'm just saddened all over again at what happened, you know, that she was taken from us too soon. And it's a real shame. I'm glad I didn't film this review right after I'd seen this, because I was a big crying snot ball mess after I watched it. Of course, filming at 3 o'clock in the morning wouldn't have been the best thing anyway. So I've got some distance between now and having seen it, but still, it's just thinking about it's quite sad. But anyway, if you guys watched this series, if you've made it to the end of this long-ass rambling video review, what did you think about it? And are you even interested to check it out? Let me know what you think. If you've seen it, if you don't plan to see it, if you think maybe you'll see it now, or whatever. Okay, I think I'm done. I think I've gone over everything. If there's anything that I remember while I'm editing, maybe I'll put a little note in it or something. So, okay, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up because I am way late for my exercise. Got to take a break. I've been sitting way too long today. All right, you guys, bye.